A recent report has revealed that the Toronto Raptors are likely to deal away Chris Boucher ahead of this year's trade deadline. So we're going to break down potential team that he could end up, whether or not it makes sense for this Toronto Raptors group, and just how our entire roster is going to look in a couple weeks after a couple blockbuster trades have already gone down from the team. So lots of stuff to dive into. Without further ado, let's jump straight into it, as basically Blake Murphy came out and said that Chris Boucher is going to have a new home at some point. I can tell you in fairly certain terms, and that's being explored and will probably happen by the February 8th trade deadline. And, just from an emotional aspect, all of the members being gone from that championship winning team, it just sucks to see it. And Chris Boucher, being a Canadian, being a guy that obviously had a couple of years with Golden State, but was really developed and blossomed on this Toronto Raptors group, it sucks to see. And I'm saying it out here on the jump, I'd personally rather just keep Chris Boucher, at least for right now, for the rest of the season, given how unbalanced our sort of roster has been. Now, he's struggled this year. He hasn't been given a lot of minutes under Darko Rajakovic, or at least consistent minutes, even despite the fact we don't have a deep front court now after the OG Anunoby and Pascal Siakam deals. But I just hate seeing Chris Boucher go because he's a valuable piece. And frankly, I think his trade value can be increased if we keep him, for the rest of this season, if we keep him sort of under roster and give him more opportunities with our depleted front court, whether we're tanking, whether we're winning. I think just having Chris Boucher, dealing him right now, we might not be able to get a ton of value back, whereas we might be able to in the summer if we do plan on moving off of Chris Boucher. Because you look at the stats, everything going on with Chris Boucher here now at this point, right? 6 points per game, 4 rebounds, 33% from the three-point line. That's sort of been his average in recent seasons. He's 31 years old, so not a young guy by any means at this point. Not a young prospect, even though he sort of developed late. Was not a rookie when he came to the Toronto Raptors or into the league, but, it's sort of entering still in the prime of his career, not old or washed at this point, but has been a guy that has struggled at points this year, has had some good games, but just hasn't been giving a lot of run. But basically, where could Chris Boucher go? What could the Toronto Raptors get back for him if a deal were to go down? Well, basically, news has come out that the Toronto Raptors center Chris Boucher has reportedly been on Boston's radar for some time, according to Jake Fisher. The Raptors could shake things up at the deadline too, as they've already traded away forward OG Anunoby. This report came out a couple weeks ago ahead of the Pascal Siakam deal, but the Celtics would definitely like to find a couple of their guys. Chris Boucher, for example, is someone that the Celtics have always liked. Now, someone that's watched, pretty well every Raptors game of the past few years, Chris Boucher seems to always have it out for the Boston Celtics and Philadelphia 76ers. He turns his game up to another level. The same way, a guy on the Celtics like Peyton Pritchard just always turns his game up to another notch when he plays the Raptors. Chris Boucher seems to elevate his game 24/7 against the Celtics and the Sixers. So talking to their fans, talking to, some people that cover those teams, they look at Chris Boucher as a potential steal out there on the open market for those types of groups. And maybe the front offices of those teams also sort of visualize that as well. Obviously, they're going to be looking at the stats and other teams. So maybe the Raptors will be able to get some value back from a Boston Celtics team that, again, has reportedly had interest in him from one of these couple groups. But what could potentially come back? Because frankly, again, the numbers aren't too great for Chris Boucher. He's an older player. His contract right now, in terms of for the Toronto Raptors, $10 million-ish per year for the next couple seasons. So, the Boston Celtics, what could they have to offer? You're not getting Drew. You're not getting Kristaps. You're not getting Tatum. You're not getting Brown. You're not getting Darrell White. And you're probably not getting Al Horford. Peyton Pritchard's a guy that, again, just signed a longer-term contract. The Raptors are all about flexibility at this point, and everyone's been sort of talked about it. And it makes sense for the only reason to make a Chris Boucher sort of trade go down is for the point of it is to add flexibility to this Toronto Raptors team. So taking a Peyton Pritchard while we're already loaded at the guards at this point with Emmanuel Quickly, with Dennis Schroeder here now, and maybe he'll get dealt as well at this point. Kira Lewis Jr. was also picked up in that sort of Pascal Siakam deal. Then you can look at our sort of off guards. If you think Peyton Pritchard could be a shooter, you have Gary, you have RJ Barrett, you currently have Grady Dick, who has been playing well as of late, had that nice game against the New York Knicks, a really promising showing there. You have Bruce Brown, who's naturally a shooting guard, but plays at different positions. I mean, just as the roster as is constructed right now. Again, shakeups are coming for the Toronto Raptors, it feels like, but it doesn't make sense to bring in a Peyton Pritchard. So what else could you get from the Boston Celtics? We don't want Svi back. I don't think a lot of people want Delano back. Lamar Stevens has had some potential at times over the course of his career, but not that great. Luke Cornett is an interesting piece, but again, not super interested in any of those dudes. The two pieces that do intrigue me from the Boston Celtics are one, Neemias Queta. who this season is averaging 5 and 5, 55% from the field, 77% from the free throw line. I mean, he's younger than Chris Boucher. He's an athlete. He can get to the rim. He's a rim protector. He's a guy that Boston Celtics fans really like. And you kind of looking at the salary situation, it doesn't even show up on Basketball Reference. But basically, you would have Neemias Queta kind of under locks for a while, and he provides some defense that we lost with our front court sort of getting depleted. So he's a guy that I wouldn't mind coming back in a potential Chris Boucher deal, including maybe some draft compensation. Again, I'd be shocked if we're getting a first for Chris Boucher, but a couple seconds, we get some front court depth, and maybe a younger player that could develop into something nice, or even a no-shape Brissett, who was with the Toronto Raptors formerly, 25 years old, 4.3 rebounds, can space the floor, plays defense, was really good for the Indiana Pacers. So a couple guys there again. They're probably downgrades over Chris Boucher as of right now, but they're younger. You have more flexibility, and it just kind of opens up the possibilities for this team in the future. So, are we getting something drastic, something great for Chris? Probably not. I mean, the rest of the roster, the guy that would be a steal if Masai Ujiri can kind of find it is Jordan Walsh, or even a Sam Hauser from that group, but I don't think those guys are getting dealt either. But so it's again. Boucher's not netting you a lot of value given his larger-ish contract, his low-key performance this year. So I'd say keep him on the team. Let him sort of blossom. Let him up his trade value. Let him see if he can be a productive piece for this team in the future. And that's probably the smartest move in my opinion. But it does seem like, according to Blake Murphy, that he's going to get dealt. And that kind of just sucks to see. And the Celtics, regarding their draft picks as well, they got a bunch of seconds. So maybe we get a few seconds for Chris Boucher. But I don't know. I'm not getting my hopes up to another level around a Chris Boucher deal. But after that loss to the Knicks, after everything that's sort of been going down with this team, we don't know whether or not we're tanking, whether or not we're winning. And frankly, the only way I see this team properly tanking is, I think if Jakob Poeltl comes back, we're going to win some games. But the Raptors right now are pretty low in the standings, right? We're currently 6th. If we keep it to the bottom 6 and we get lucky in the draft lottery, then we will be keeping our draft pick ahead of this year, and then we will have close to 3 first round picks in this year's draft with a second next year, which will be basically a late first, given the fact it's the Detroit Pistons draft selection. I mean, trading away Chris Boucher, the one thing it does, it depletes your front court even further. And then we've seen it in games against the Bulls, right? We get dominated down low. Against the Knicks, Julius Randle absolutely had his way inside against this Raptors team, and it really hurt, this group, even though he didn't get crazy amounts of buckets, but he was getting boards, getting shots, and that created opportunities for Jalen Brunson, DiVincenzo to get some open looks. I mean, if we run it without our bigs for the rest of the season, we have a much better chance at keeping that draft pick for this year. We have 4 first-round picks for next season. I mean, it's not a horrific challenge, but it is a serious risk because there is that chance we fall out of that sort of top draft group. Masai said he has no interest in losing or play the right way, but he also said let's have patience and, we'll see what comes of it with the current roster group. So, I mean, more moves are likely to come. Just did a whole video, lots of stuff coming out on Bruce Brown, so you can check out that vid. But I don't know, folks. It's going to be a weird season for the Toronto Raptors, a weird close to this year. We'll keep you locked. We'll keep you covered on the Raptors Digest. But let me know what you guys think about all this Toronto Raptors news. You guys are the best. I'm signing out. Cheers.